So, in this video, we're going to talk about why humping, aka hip extension, is a technique that has transformed my climbing, and is starting to transform his too.
I think it's working!
I've been climbing with my friend Miguel a lot lately, and I realized from watching him that a lot of his climbing movements didn't incorporate this technique. This made me realize that many climbers are probably sleeping on this. So I've made this video to show not only how powerful humping is, but just how often it can be used. Humping is when you use the hip extensor muscles to perform either isotonic or isometric contractions, with the goal of straightening the angle between your back and your legs at the hips. Isotonic is when your muscles are used across a large range of motion, such as when you are raising or lowering a dumbbell in a bicep curl. Isometric, on the other hand, is when the muscles maintain a static position, like holding the dumbbell in place before dropping all the way down. In this video, we'll go over how we can use both isotonic and isometric hip contractions. The first example I'll show is of Miguel trying a V9 called Superman in Leavenworth. At the beginning, he couldn't establish, and you can see this stark bend at the hips. I mentioned he should focus on using those hip muscles, and it took a few tries, but eventually he was able to start establishing once he became more accustomed to eliminating that bend. Before, this bend in his body meant that his muscular chains looked like this. You can see that he's using his arms and his right leg, but they don't connect. In the successful attempt, however, you can see that his muscular chain is intact and connects the previously separated limbs, and this is achieved by using these hip extensor muscles to keep his hips up. The weight of holding up his falling hips used to be on his upper body and fingers, but now since his hip extensors hold him up, the fingers and upper body have more leeway to do other things like help him pull into a position to start moving the left leg. Too bad he misses the next move though. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll know I'm a proponent of hip swings and hip thrusts. Hip swings are when you rock back and forth using your legs to propel your hips forward, and hip thrusts are when you rotate at the hips. In this video, I call out the pelvic tilt motion. This is done to propel your hips forward, and it can be done with a hip swing or without, depending on how good your feet are. In dynamic movements like these, we can see that this hip motion is essentially a hip extension on the wall. By training our ability to do this at speed, we will learn to do dynamic movements without relying as heavily on our upper body. We can even do it without the legs in situations where we have so little room to move our feet that we can only use hip extension. Even in cases where you might cut feet, this motion can be valuable in drawing out how long you maintain tension. Attempting to latch holds while you are already falling will take much more strength to fight the drop, but maintaining tension for longer before you cut can allow you to grab a hold well and in control. The drawback with dynamic moves is that your body will likely fall away from the wall. Let's learn to combine isotonic hip contraction with isometric hip contraction to prevent that, which is what I call hip follow through. When doing powerful dynamic movements, we can use these muscles to hold our position and prevent our hips from falling backwards. This is a perfect example of using tension in the right ways to optimize momentum usage, because before, we'd fall from the wall more, so there's more weight for our upper body and fingers to catch when we make contact. Contrast this to when we use these muscles to keep it closer to the wall, there will be significantly less falling to absorb with those upper body muscles. We've examined hip thrusts and hip swings on this channel before, but this time I wanted to show how these motions relate to hip contraction concepts. Not only can we generate motion through these isotonic contractions, but we can also follow up with the isometric contractions to maintain an optimal position and minimize load on other body parts. This concept of combining isotonic motions with an isometric follow-through is not limited to dynamic movements. Here's an example of using this isotonic plus isometric hip extension concept statically. In this video, I have to execute a difficult cross, and the hip extension gives me more time to actually grab the hold before falling off of the foot. If you're interested in how I train this myself, in this video I go over how I frequently use a drill I call no hip drop to help me train this skill on a variety of climbs. If you're the type to climb on boards, then this drill is particularly effective during your board warm-ups, since the harsh overhang and poor holds will make the exercise significantly more challenging. I think at this point we've done enough of an analysis on the basics, So we can take a more cursory look at a variety of scenarios just to get across how common this movement can be. Maybe these examples will get you psyched to look for even more situations that this can be applied to. Heel hooks. It's common to have similar angles between your lower body and upper body when doing heel hooks. Your posterior chain will include the hip extensor muscles, the gluteus maximus, and hamstrings. So heel hooks are a great way to start practicing how you chain. 1. Generating these powerful isotonic motions into 2. Maintaining stable isometric positions. Toe hooks. Some climbs will require a strong isometric hip extension in order to keep your weight in the right spot to maintain tension. In this climb, if my hips drift from the wall too much, then there will be downward force that will cause my toe hook to slide out from the hold. So I need to ensure that I maintain tension with this isometric hip extension to maximize my lower body's involvement. On this climb, I needed to use a toe smear with my left leg to help prop my hips up. And because I am so used to that type of position, I knew what techniques I could use to help me get there. The toe smear I showed here is but one example of the insane amount of applications that toe smearing can be applied to. So check out this video if you want to see more.